Welcome back, and joining me now is Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Senator Klobuchar, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks. Great to be on again, Kristen.
It is great to have you here in person. Thanks so much for being here. I want to start off with what I was discussing with Secretary Bessent, those Democratic senators, Congress people who recorded that video telling members of the military, the intelligence community, that they can refuse orders that violate the law. The president called this seditious behavior punishable by death. I want to play a little bit of what Speaker Johnson had to say about this. Take a listen.
Everybody knows that was wildly inappropriate. It is very dangerous. You have leading members of Congress telling troops to disobey orders. I think that's unprecedented in American history.
Secretary Bessent just said this was a complete mistake. They should retract it. What do you make of that? Should they retract it? Is it dangerous, as the Speaker said?
Well, what is dangerous is not restating what is in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which says that our troops cannot follow unlawful orders very clearly. What is dangerous is the President of the United States threatening these members of Congress with death, literally saying that they should be executed. As Mark Kelly said, he is someone who has flown a plane that had a missile land nearly on that plane. He has taken in anti-aircraft fire. He has launched into space, into orbit on behalf of his country. And he never thought that a president of the United States would try to execute him or to tell people. This is not at all a game. My dear friend, Melissa Hortman, the former Speaker of the House, and her husband were killed in cold blood with someone who was engaging in political violence. That was the shooter. Or my other friends there took between them, a husband and wife, 17 shots. Or what happened to Charlie Kirk, that assassination. Members of Congress threats have gone from 1,600 to over 14,000 in just a few years, and that is every year. That's what we're dealing with right now.
I hear what you're saying about those horrific acts of political violence, Senator. I wonder, do you know what the specific illegal acts are that your Democratic colleagues were referring to there?
Well, it's very clear in this code for the military that you cannot follow unlawful orders. And, you know, that would be, I'll just use an example. Some of the judges have now found in certain cities that it is not legal to send in the National Guard. And those National Guard members have come home. Some of them are still there. But if their commander were to tell them, hey, go out on the streets and do this and that, that's not following the order that is in law. So I just use that example. I'm sure my colleagues would have others. But the key is this has been a long-time tenet of the American military. And it is very clearly right there. And that is all our colleagues were saying. And they have every right to say it. They have served our country bravely. They know what they're talking about. And then this president's answer was to basically tell them, he retweeted someone else saying they should be hanged.
Let me ask you about another topic that got a lot of attention, started the week. Congress overwhelmingly voting to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. The president signed the bill this week. Do you have faith that the Justice Department will follow through and, in fact, release all of the Epstein files, Senator?
I don't know how the Congress could be clearer on this, Kristen. The Congress, Democrats and Republicans, nearly unanimously said release these. And right now, Pam Bondi has suddenly started a new investigation. There is something in that law that says if there are pending criminal investigations, that there would be an exception, except it says that it has to be narrowly tailored, and they cannot use the excuse, this is a second clause, that this would be politically embarrassing or hurt someone politically. That can't be their motivation for doing it. So if she does this, if she refuses to release all of these Epstein files, this will be against the spirit and the words in that law. You also have the fact that Secretary Bessent has yet to release the Treasury files. And I always said as a former prosecutor, follow the money. And you can follow that money of how this was funded in international sex trafficking ring. That's why the House is subpoenaing records from the banks. And that's why Senator Wyden and Senate Democrats are focused on let's get the records from the Treasury Department.
All right, let's turn to the big news overseas now. This discussion about a potential 28-point peace plan between Russia and Ukraine. The proposal includes Ukraine ceding large swaths of its territory to Russia in exchange for security guarantees that Ukraine is quite skeptical of, among other concessions. Do you believe that President Zelensky should accept this peace plan?
I don't believe that this is a pro-Ukraine peace plan. Compromises are compromises, but what the president has put out here is a plan that is very favorable to Russia. I was just in Rome with Ukrainian kids meeting with the Pope just on Friday. And those kids, when you hear their stories, the heinous crimes that have been committed, thousands of kids kidnapped, brought to Russia, taken away from their homeland. You've got maternity wards bombed, apartment buildings bombed, just an invasion of a sovereign nation. So that is why any peace agreement has to have buy-in from the Ukrainians as well as the Europeans, because the Ukrainians have the one that have shed the blood for not just their own homeland, but for the rest of NATO and the rest of Europe. And that's why this plan, which basically says, you know, you're going to be able to have more territory than you even have now, Russia. That's what it says. There is no set plan for a peacekeeping force. There is no accountability for any war crimes. That's what they put forth. And I am glad to hear some of my Republican colleagues, like Senator Rounds, pushing back.
Very quickly, on the issue of health care, Democrats want to see the Obamacare tax subsidies extended. That was at the center of the fight over the government shutdown, the longest in U.S. history. Do you believe those tax credits are going to be passed, or do you think this is a battle that's going to be waged at the ballot box, quite frankly, Senator?
I would say to the people of this country on these plans that are seeing a doubling, tripling of their premiums, 75% of them in red states, and I'd say to Secretary Bessent, look at what these people are going through right now. So, number one, the president refused to negotiate. He still has an opportunity to do that. Number two, he used basically hungry people and air travelers as pawns in his game. But the third thing is, we are going to get this done, Kristen. We're either going to get it done by forcing votes or by putting it on legislation, or we're going to march into the midterms against their resistance and win.
Okay.
This will get done.
All right, we'll be watching closely. Senator Klobuchar, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.